His response had to do with call to action number 58 and its rather strict confines.
Tonight, Catholic bishops try to explain what the Pope means by his unwillingness to apologize to residential school survivors.
All of their reasons for doing this are different.
Arrested protesters of the Kinder Morgan pipeline expansion make a first court appearance.
This is an example of what communities can do when you pull together.
And the Toronto Blue Jays hit the ball out of the park for the Kwanlin Dün First Nation. Good evening, I'm Beverly Andrews. Catholic bishops held a rare press conference in Ottawa. Their plan was to clarify Pope Francis's response to the Prime Minister about an apology to residential school survivors. Here's Annette Francis with more.
Members of the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops addressed a full room of reporters on the Hill. Archbishop Richard Gagnon expressed concerns over the misconceptions that Pope Francis is refusing to apologize to residential school survivors.
He's open to considering coming to Canada. He has been invited to Canada from the Prime Minister, from 3 of our presidents of the Catholic Conference of Bishops in Canada, including Monsignor Gendron, has invited the Pope to come. So he knows that. His response had to do with call to action number 58 and its rather strict confines.
Number 58 is one of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. It reads, "We call upon the Pope to issue an apology to survivors, their families, and communities for the Roman Catholic Church's role in the spiritual, cultural, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children. For that apology to be similar to the 2010 apology issued to Irish victims of abuse, and to occur within 1 year of the issuing of this report, and to be delivered by the Pope in Canada." Archbishop Gagnon says that doesn't mean the Pope won't apologize.
When he says he is open to considering to come to Canada, you know, he's not saying he will not apologize, because if you place Pope Francis among Indigenous people and he hears these horrible stories, what do you think he's going to say?
Residential school survivor and NDP MP Romeo Saganash attended the press conference.
Already when the Pope announced that he wouldn't apologize, I was, of course, as a survivor, very disappointed. And after hearing what they said today, I'm disgusted. You probably noticed that I walked out because I wanted to go throw up.
Senator Murray Sinclair says those who made the decision not to allow an apology from the Pope should feel shame.
I also have a great deal of sympathy for those survivors who continue to follow the faith of the Church. My grandmother would have been one of them if she were alive today, because she was a very strong Catholic. She went to a residential school, and she was raised as a Catholic, and she died as a Catholic. And she would have stood behind her church all the way, but she also would have appreciated knowing that the Church would take responsibility for what it created and the environment that it created, not only for her but for others.
The press conference was in response to a motion by NDP MP Charlie Angus and Romeo Saganash to get the Prime Minister to ask the Canadian bishops to convince the Pope to apologize. The Conservatives chose to kill that motion in the House of Commons just after the press conference.
No, we don't seem to have unanimous consent.
Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The Quebec inquiry into relationships between Indigenous peoples and certain public services was created to shed light on systematic issues. But not all participants withstanding have been able to afford legal representation. Danielle Rochette reports.
Je représente Femmes autochtones du Québec et nous, la question qui est vraiment centrale dans le mandat de notre association, c'est la sécurité des femmes et de manière aussi collatérale la sécurité des enfants.
That was last March at Earrings in Montreal. Rainbow Miller is now back to representing Quebec Native Women's Association, thanks to the generosity of the Oblate Franciscaine de Saint-Joseph. through their foundation, they donated $57,000 to the association to pay for a lawyer.
On s'est dit, ces femmes-là qui, actuellement, dans un grand mouvement de réconciliation, ont besoin d'avocats pour les défendre.
Pierrette Bertrand is the congregation's superior mother. She's concerned about justice, equity, and reconciliation with First Nations.
Ce qu'on essaie de faire avec Réconciliation actuellement, tout le mouvement qui met sous nos yeux et pour nous faire comprendre ce qu'elles vivent et pour elles ce qui a été des traitements injustes, que ça puisse finalement s'arrêter et que ces femmes-là soient traitées égal à égal avec nous.
Viviane Michel, the president of Quebec Native Women's Association, is grateful to the nuns' congregation. She says their presence at the Quebec Inquiry is essential.
L'importance, nous, c'était vraiment de regarder la situation des femmes, la faire ressortir dans cette commission d'enquête et aussi pouvoir intervenir si, exemple, on parlait de la brutalité policière. Si un policier était amené à témoigner, on pouvait participer aux questions, à poser des questions aux policiers.
But one question remains for many Aboriginal women. Why does the Quebec Native Women's Association have to ask for charity to be legally represented at the Quebec Inquiry into the relationship with Aboriginal people? Daniel Rachette, APTN National News, Montreal.
Early last week, rumors circulated in Winnipeg that Nietzsche Commons, a local Indigenous-run cooperative, was laying off the majority of their staff and closing their doors. APTN's Mel Hansen brings us more.
Is Nietzsche Commons closing? Nietzsche Commons is an Indigenous-run cooperative in Winnipeg's North End, employing over 40 employees, 80% of which are Indigenous. In July 2017, the cooperative's lender, the Assiniboine Credit Union, put the building up for auction because Nietzsche had not made sufficient mortgage payments until moving into the new building in 2013. The starting bid? $3.8 million. There were no takers after the auction, buying the board more time to find a solution and try paying back their loans, while keeping the cooperative's doors open. Louise Champagne, the president of the board, who's been running the co-op, says they've been trying to find new and innovative solutions.
We are in the process of thinking and planning and consulting around what could possibly go into what kind of other uses can the building have, and more significantly that it stays a building for community use.
Champagne says they are not planning on closing, and the stores and restaurant could keep going if a buyer emerges that would allow the cooperative to lease the space and keep functioning as it is now. But the real estate posting from Wakefield and Cushman states the 2,200 square foot building is on the market for $4.9 million and has the potential to be a turnkey grocery store. A former employee, Kelly Edwards, says the board started sending out letters of termination as of March 20th, giving current employees anywhere from no notice to 6 weeks' notice that they were no longer going to be employed by Nietzsche Commons. Edwards said since then several employees have reached out to him asking for references over the last 6 weeks.
It mainly started with the restaurant staff being terminated first, and then like literally like almost every single week after that, it was like more and more employees, and pretty much every single employee who's been there a long time who doesn't serve on the board has been terminated.
Champagne says the allegations of accusing the cooperative of laying off the majority of its staff are untrue. But APTN reached out to a current employee who confirmed the layoffs were happening through email yesterday. One employee who did not want to be named out of fear of losing their contractual shifts wrote, "As far as I know, everyone got the layoff papers, but they are keeping some of us as fee-for-service workers for the time being." Without a buyer, the future of Nietzsche Commons and its staff remains uncertain. Mel Hansen, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Trans Mountain Pipeline is facing protests and legal challenges. Protesters are facing arrest and criminal charges. After the break, we'll look at what this means for the expansion of the pipeline and for those protesting on the ground. But first, tomorrow's weather outlook. Raining on the east coast, Charlottetown +7, Halifax +9. Kuujjuaq is sunny and -4, La Grande is 0 with cloud. More cloud in St. Jovette and +5. Wet flurries in Gaspé, +4. North Bay is -1 and cloudy. Sault Ste. Marie is sunny and +2. Thunder Bay is a sunny +11, 0 and cloudy in Sudbury. Sunny and +9 in Flin Flon and Island Lake. Partly cloudy and +9 in Gimli Harbor. Sunny and +13 in Dauphin. Sunny in Saskatchewan, +5 in Yorkton, +8 in Saskatoon and Swift Current. More sun in Meadow Lake and La Ronge, both at +9. Throughout the ongoing battle over Kinder Morgan's pipeline expansion, protesters have been camping out at the company's main terminal in Burnaby. With the battle heating up, APTN's Lori Hanlon met one woman who drove from Alberta to support the camp.
Rose Desjardins is at Camp Cloud monitoring trucks entering the main gate of Kinder Morgan's Burnaby tank farm, the protest camp set up directly across the street 5 months ago. Last month, Rose drove 19 hours from Fort McMurray to support water protectors living at the camp.
I am a victim of the tar sands. I'm homeless. I'm penniless. I'm a cancer patient. So I sit here with people who are in the same belief as me.
Growing up in Fort Chip, Rose says she saw her homeland destroyed by the oil industry.
Oil, gas, pipelines, industry, oil companies, they just came into our homeland and just took over. There's no livelihood left on our homeland, and I could not stop it.
Rose made the long drive to Camp Cloud to help make a difference here in BC and back at home in Alberta.
When there's no pipeline, there will be no production. Eventually, it will stop. Eventually, the oil and gas companies will pack up and leave. I have confidence and I believe the pipeline will not ever exist.
But Trudeau insists Kinder Morgan's pipeline project will be built, and that has some protesters worried that this battle will become the next Standing Rock. Not Rose. She says people standing in solidarity against big oil is a good thing, no matter what.
I'm not afraid of this becoming like the second Standing Rock, because Standing Rock was the beginning of a major change for the better for people all around. And this here, what's happening now, is for the better too.
Zenoa Skinte, Camp Cloud's creator, is confident that the fight over the pipeline won't escalate that far.
I see Kinder Morgan essentially tapping out before that happens.
Protesters who defied a permanent injunction prohibiting anyone from going within 5 meters of the oil giant's work sites may now be charged criminally instead of civilly. Although this news has slowed down the actions of the water protectors, Camp Cloud residents say they're not moving.
Got to do things wisely and effectively, peacefully, but also, there's diversity of tactics, right? The cloud isn't moving anytime soon, that's for sure.
There are 10 permanent residents of Camp Cloud, with supporters dropping in daily, some for a few hours, some for a few days. Lori Hamlin, APTN National News, Burnaby.
Since mid-January, 140 people have been arrested protesting the Kinder Morgan tank farm in BC. Today, they're making their first court appearance. All 140 of them defied the court injunction and crossed the line. Recently, the judge upgraded their charges from civil contempt to criminal contempt, and in some cases, that carries a jail sentence. A rally was held outside of the courthouse by protesters who came to show their support for those who got arrested.
There's students, there's house, moms with a baby. I have a really dear friend has a little baby. My other friend's a grandmother. My other friend is a business owner, and all of their reasons for doing this are different. A lot of them have a concern for their children and grandchildren. Others are just know the whole pipeline is wrong at this time of our history.
The federal and BC government's decision to approve the Kinder Morgan pipeline extension doesn't just face opposition from protesters, they also face an onslaught of legal challenges. There are now a total of 18 separate legal challenges to the expansion by First Nations, municipalities, and environmental groups. To explain what these challenges could mean for the project, we are joined by Eugene Kung, a lawyer with West Coast Environmental Law in Vancouver. Hello, Mr. Kung.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Can you give us a summary of the legal opposition the pipeline faces?
Sure. So at this moment, we have still 16 outstanding cases in the Canadian court system. 14 of those are before the federal court, challenging the National Energy Board recommendation as well as the cabinet decision. These are cases brought by 6 different First Nations as well as municipalities, environmental groups, generally holding constitutional errors in terms of consultation, but also statutory errors and failures to follow the National Energy Board Act, the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act, and so on. I think it's important that to note that in some of the cases, the Stolo applicants, for example, already have established rights from the Supreme Court of Canada in the Vanderpeet case, and so part of this case is about the failure to justify the infringement of those established rights. There are also 2 cases in the BC Supreme Court by the Squamish Nation and Vancouver, City of Vancouver, that are challenging BC's own approval. And if those were successful, that could basically quash or cancel the BC approvals on which a lot of the permits are based. Of course, we also have the upcoming reference case, which we've just heard today will be filed by the end of the month. And there are cases happening as well in Washington State brought by the Tulalip and Suquamish tribes against the Coast Guard there. So a lot of legal uncertainty is still remaining.
And how long do you think it'll take for these cases to make it through the courts?
Well, they've, in terms of the Canadian cases, they've been heard. There were hearings in the fall. In the Federal Court of Appeal case, it was the longest hearing in their history, eclipsing the Enbridge case that happened a couple years previous. So all the arguments have been made. We're just waiting for the decision from the courts. My best guess for a decision is sometime in June, and that's just based on the timing in Enbridge.
And do you think that these challenges could stop this pipeline from happening?
Absolutely. The outcome of those cases could quash or cancel the very federal and provincial approvals that we are now talking about enforcing through these new political legislative means. And so what that means is if any of the nations or municipalities or environmental groups are successful on almost any of their legal issues, that could cause further delay, further process for Kinder Morgan. I think it's important to note that just last week, the CEO, Stephen Keane, told their investors after they made the announcement to suspend non-essential spending, basically said that, we hope we're going to win, but even if we win and there are more conditions, so more consultation, for example, additional measures to fill in some of the gaps, that in his words, he said that might be too much to bear. And then, of course, from the Federal Court of Appeal, there's the likelihood and possibility of an appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada, which seems this is where this is destined for. And the BC Supreme Court cases, of course, could be appealed to the BC Court of Appeal.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, Mr. Kung.
Thank you for having me.
The Prime Minister might be across the Atlantic in Europe, but opposition over the Kinder Morgan pipeline project in British Columbia followed him to the UK. Greenpeace members erected a pipeline outside of the Canadian High Commission in London with a banner reading Trudeau Oil on the side. Greenpeace says if Trudeau really intends to do what's right for the environment, he should be killing the project, not pushing it through against the will of British Columbians. And it's batter up for one Yukon First Nation. We'll get details on how the Toronto Blue Jays are helping spruce up a local baseball park after the break. But first, here's a look at the rest of tomorrow's weather. Peace River is a sunny +10, sunny and +12 in Fort McMurray. Edmonton is at +9 with sun. Lethbridge is also +9 but with cloud. Kamloops is plus 17, partly cloudy. Bellacua and Tofino, cloudy and plus 11. Cloud cover in Prince George and plus 9. Dease Lake is also cloudy at plus 5. Sunny in Dawson City and plus 4. Rock River also sunny, minus 13. Norman Wells partly cloudy and minus 9. More cloud in Trout Lake, plus 9. Cloud cover and minus 24 in Sax Harbor, minus 14 in Fort McPherson, minus 5 and cloudy in Repulse Bay, sun and minus 7 in Baker Lake. Pangerton is sunny and minus 9. Tallyoke is cloudy at minus 6. Looks like the Kwanlin Dün First Nation has just hit an inside the park home run. Inside the park because they just received funding from the Blue Jays to build their own field of dreams. Shirley McLean brings us the details.
Loud cheers of excitement and gratitude for the Toronto Blue Jays from the Kwanlin Dün First Nation. They just heard the Jays Charity Foundation will be giving their community $99,000 to spruce up their baseball park.
One of their goals is the right to play. And we all believe in the right to play as well, and we're really happy that now our youth are going to have that ability through our new refurbished Field of Dreams.
The current ball diamond in Kwanlin Dün subdivision is in need of an upgrade. Chief Doris Bill says instead of asking for minor upgrades, they dreamed big and asked for it all.
This is our field of dreams here. Let's dream big. So we did. We put everything in there. We put a batting cage, electronic scoreboard, up to Yukon softball standards. That's what we'd like to see. So we can invite other community, and I'm talking the larger community of Whitehorse, we can invite other people into our community to use our ball diamond, to play with our citizens, have a tournament,
By meeting softball Yukon standards, the field can be used by other community groups as well, or maybe even support international sporting events like the Men's World Softball Championships that Yukon has hosted more than once.
Now is a good time to sit down and figure out what you're going to put on that park. I think in the Yukon, as of late, there's a ton of opportunities and different things that you can do.
The Jays Care Foundation gave out $1.4 million to 15 community organizations across the nation.
Many communities across the country are struggling about what to do about reconciliation, and this is an example of what communities can do when you pull together.
Kwanlin Dün says there will be a community celebration when the field opens with a game and a feast. Shirley McLean, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
That's your APTN National News for this Wednesday. For news anytime, including more on the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Pipeline, visit our website at aptn.ca. I'm Beverly Andrews. Have a great night. I hope we'll see you back here tomorrow.